It was a party to remember. The Stone Hill Inn rocked as music and the sounds of revelry bounded from its open windows. It seemed everyone in Phandalin had showed up to celebrate the return of the heroes. Damian Sandowl, elf rogue of the High Forest, partied like he deserved it. In his mind, and the minds of the people of Phandalin, he did. They did. Damian was a hero to these people. It was amazing to him how moral judgment can be reserved when the person being judged was overtly beneficial. He indulged fine wine, juice dripping from freshly stewed venison, more than one of the women of Phandalin sitting on his lap and hearing of his harrowing tale. He reveled in his newfound fame, if only for that one night. Drunk, he stood atop a table with his sorcerer friend Kaidos, a tiefling whose wicked appearance was only matched by his sense of humor. Together they spun the tale of Wave Echo Cave, leaving no death-defying detail untold. Ultimately, it was a story that would be repeated in song by bards of the North for years to come. Eventually, Damian would retire, hiring companionship for once wasn't needed. The party continued even after Damian had taken his companion for the night and retired to his room. When the wood elf awoke, it was close to midday. The peaceful sounds of birds chirping and a town merrily going about its business wafted in through the window. His companion had already let herself out. The rogue sat up, shaking off the fog of spirits, and asked the ceiling, "What the hell do I do now?" He knew the answer. It just wasn't like him to have a plan. He certainly had long-term goals, but he'd been successful so far by riding the rhythms of life, following his gut and hopping from opportunity to opportunity. 2 steps forward, 1 step back became a tolerable method of existence. After being turned away by Cardin the Dark and the Shadow Thieves in Neverwinter, he'd successfully eliminated his rivals, the Red Brands. He'd been initiated into the family and made profitable inroads here in Phandalin. And most importantly, he'd found a clue as to the whereabouts of Kira Arakor, the green gem of the forest, feared, lost forever. He had learned that the magical gem warden of his people had been taken by the Eladrin to the Feywild. He wasn't sure why just yet, but it was something. Something nobody in his clan had been able to locate for 2 elven generations. Da Exelim Shardal Alien, his paternal uncle, now a member of the Elven Council of the High Forest, was the last to retrieve the gem after it had been stolen following the collapse of Wave Echo Cave. Many of the wood elves from Evermeet had migrated back to the High Forest. The elves that had remained welcomed home their cousins as help was needed in the never-ending fight against the innumerable tribes of orcs, gnolls, and other evil threats. Since their arrival and the ascension to the throne of Morgwai Nightmeadow, referred to as the Lady of the Wood by the Ortel Kesir, things had been easier on the elves, though Clan Sandowl Alien still watched over the ancient city of Kars. But with the Karstone last seen in the hands of Shar, goddess of darkness, over 100 years ago, it was only Wulgrith the Askalhi, a lich whose phylactery is the Karstone itself, who still posed any immediate threat from the ancient city ruins. Now it was the pesky disappearance of the gem that plagued the ancient Sandowl alien bloodline, charged with its protection and recovery. Damian knew what he must do. He gathered his supplies, left his portion of the investment, 334 gold pieces, in the renovation of the Sleeping Giant Tap House with Townmaster Halia Thornton, and in the name of haste, left behind his beloved mule and royal traveling tent, taken from Hamon Coast, Red Wizard of Thay, assassinated at the Old Owl Well. Damian was headed home. It was roughly 400 miles to the ruins of Kars from Phandalin. He flew, barely stopping to rest. It took 8 days of hard, almost continuous riding to reach his high forest home. When he entered his village, he was exhausted and collapsed before he could explain his reappearance. His father, Del Nye, and uncle, Da Exelim, were joined by Morgwes and were waiting for the elf rogue to awaken. When he did, they were astonished to learn that Damian had made progress, learning at least a clue about the location of Kira Arakor. Damian spent a 10-day reconnecting with his family, clan, and village. There was a bacchanal in his honor, dark elven wine overflowed, and a juicy beast roasted for feast. Among the ancient verdancy of the high forest, Damian felt comfortable for the first time since he left his homeland. He might find temporary comfort within the arms of a lover, a high-stakes card game, or in the bottom of a bottle. But the feeling of comfort was always fleeting. The high forest was his home. Maybe if he returned with the gem, he could one day become king. He didn't dare share that ambition. During his 15 days home, for discovering a clue to the gem's whereabouts, Del Nye gifted him a magic cloak, the secret of its crafting a highly guarded elven secret. He also learned two things from Da Exelim and Morgwace, respectively: the existence of an ancient magical elven court bow, and the artifact needed to craft an item the rogue craved. Damian would quest for both. He also learned that his cousin, Danalea Shah Aelian, the last elf tasked with hunting the gem, was found dead far in the east by the elves of Everesca. She was killed by a clan of hill giants she apparently encountered during her quests, her body having been just recovered, as encounters with the giants were growing ever more frequent. After reconnecting with family and friends, discussing potential investments and enterprises with his clan, and mourning his cousin, Damian returned to his sworn duty. He traveled back to Phandalin from the High Forest, with one stop along the way. After 5 days' travel, he paused. The rest related to the artifact Damian required. Deep within the western High Forest, a day's journey south from Shadowtop Cathedral, Damian was told of a cave. The dank den was the home of a green hag. The hag possessed something the rogue needed. He baited her, pretending to be injured and lost, drawing the hag from her greedy grotto. Once she was outside her den, Damian hid and unleashed an arrow that was meant to assassinate the horrible creature. Striking the fey abomination directly in the chest, the hag howled and disappeared. For several moments, the hag and the elf looked for each other, Damian hidden in the treetops, aided by his elven cloak. It would be the hag, her movement detected upon the damp earth, that allowed Damian to loose another arrow. This time, it finished her. She fell to the forest floor, clutching the arrow stuck expertly into her neck. Damian stood over her gnarled green body and said an elven prayer that she be delivered to her proper place beyond the material plane. Then he cut off a chunk of her wiry gray hair. This he would deliver to Frida, the weaver, back in Phandalin, in the hopes that she could create something for Damian. He was certainly willing to pay for it. At the end of a 10-day, Damian rode back into Phandalin from the east. After consulting with Halia, he turned his attention to checking the progress of the sleeping giant tap house. Thulman, Gundren's cousin and fellow adventurer, had been hard at work restoring the old run-down bar. The renovations were startling. Not only was the place cleaned up, but the bar had been replaced, the roof completely redone, door and windows repaired, floor refinished, and standing near the rear of the building, 5 large barrels stood ready to brew. Gladstone Furknuckles would have the best equipment possible for his proprietary concoctions. The most notable change was the sign. It featured the silhouette of a green dragon and read Venom Fang's Guild Hall. Inside the hall, Venom Fang's head hung above the stately stone fireplace, a memento of the party's harrowing fights with the young worm. Damian would oversee the finances of the venture. Thalman was the manager, taking over the day-to-day chores and responsibilities of operating an establishment of this sort. Kaidos Menetrian, tiefling sorcerer, had also invested heavily not only in the restoration of the guild hall, but also in the renovation of the dilapidated Trezendar Manor, gifted to the party by Halia for clearing out Wave Echo Cave. So far, it all seemed to be going smoothly in his absence. Next, Damian paid a visit to Frida the Weaver, dropping off the bristly hair of the green hag along with 60 gold pieces for the creation of clothes of many fashions. After one work week, which passed uneventfully in town, Damian, overseeing some of the final touches on the guild hall and officially getting his hands on the business's books, Frida would hail the rogue. The elf hurried to her and was beyond pleased with the results of her work. The clothes of many fashions could change style, color, and apparent quality at the will of the wearer. Damian marveled at the clothes, green hag's hair expertly sewn into its seams. He tried them on immediately and giggled to himself as he was able to alter their appearance effortlessly. He paid Frida another 10 gold as a tip for her marvelous work. Damian was ready to turn his attention back to the location of Kihira Harakor, the green gem of the forest, and the other threats to Phandalin, and wave Echo Mine.